the galaxy's rules, and humanity's place. The Galactic Council chamber hung in open space like a jeweled crown, its concentric rings turning slowly around a blue-white star. For 3,000 cycles, it had been the place where wars were approved, limited, and ended. Not with annihilation, but with signatures, sanctions, and carefully measured losses. War, to the galaxy, was a controlled act. Representatives of 47 species occupied their assigned platforms, each shaped for alien bodies and alien customs. Some breathed liquid, some gas, some nothing at all. Holographic banners glimmered above them, displaying the sigils of empires that had risen and fallen without ever truly disappearing. Conflict was not feared here. It was managed. At the edge of the chamber, far from the central dais, sat the human delegation. Their platform was plain, functional. No ancestral carvings. No ceremonial weapons. 3 humans stood in dark formal uniforms, hands clasped behind their backs, faces composed in that unsettling way that gave nothing away. To most of the council, they were an afterthought. Humanity had joined the interstellar community only 87 years earlier. A blink of an eye by galactic standards. They had spread quickly, yes, but carefully, negotiating access, purchasing systems others found unremarkable, settling harsh worlds no one else wanted. Their biology was fragile, their lifespans short, their emotional responses excessive. They argued passionately, formed attachments too easily, and mourned too deeply. They were kind. And kindness, the galaxy agreed, did not win wars. The debate that cycle concerned a border adjustment. A routine matter. The Varkesh Dominion, a militarized species with chitinous hides and a proud record of efficient conflicts, sought control of a human-adjacent star system. The system was sparsely defended, rich in minerals, and, according to Varkesh intelligence, poorly fortified. The Varkesh representative spoke confidently, mandibles clicking with amusement. The humans were notified. They did not object. Their silence implies consent. A few delegates chuckled. Several glanced toward the human platform. The humans did not respond. The council chair pulsed a neutral shade of gold. The rules of engagement remain in effect. Civilian centers are not to be targeted. Evacuation corridors must be respected. Of course, the Varkesh replied. We are not barbarians. The vote passed. The war, by galactic standards, would be brief. It was not. The first reports arrived 12 cycles later, carried by automated relays. The Varkesh fleet had entered the frontier system and encountered minimal resistance. Human patrol vessels withdrew according to protocol. Negotiation channels were opened. Then the bombardments began. Orbital habitats were struck under the justification of dual-use infrastructure. Evacuation convoys were intercepted under the claim of military concealment. A civilian moon, unarmed, populated by families and support workers, was fractured when its defensive grid was overloaded beyond tolerance. Millions died in minutes. When the footage reached the council, the chamber fell silent. Not the performative quiet of diplomacy, but something heavier. The Varkesh representative argued legality. The attacks, they insisted, exploited loopholes. The rules had not been violated, only interpreted creatively. Procedures were invoked. Investigations proposed. Sanctions discussed. Time passed. The human platform remained silent. No demands were made. No emergency session requested. No formal protest filed. For a species known for emotional display, the absence was unsettling. Several delegates whispered among themselves. Was this surrender? Shock? Political collapse? On Earth, there were no riots. No declarations of vengeance. No speeches filled with rage. There were funerals. Across human space, transmissions showed lines of people standing beneath open skies and artificial domes alike. Names were read aloud. Faces were projected, engineers, children, farmers, pilots. The dead were counted carefully, respectfully, as if every number mattered. Then the broadcasts ended. Communication from human military channels ceased entirely. Alien analysts celebrated the quiet. A species that felt so deeply, they concluded, could not absorb such loss. Their morale would shatter. Their leadership would fracture. The war would end itself. Within human space, deep beneath mountains and oceans, sealed vaults opened for the first time in generations. Fleets long mothballed were powered up. Doctrines written in the aftermath of humanity's bloodiest internal wars were removed from archival silence. Stamped across every file was the same designation: Last War Doctrine. Authorization codes propagated across human command networks, unlocking weapons and strategies no council inspector had ever been shown. Not because they were illegal, but because they were final. The galaxy watched the maps. The human territories did not expand. Their fleets did not advance. There were no counterattacks. Only a growing, unnatural stillness. In the council chamber, the Varkesh representative laughed softly. "They have accepted their place," he said. No one noticed the human delegates had left. The war, as the galaxy understood it, was about to end. The war humanity understood was about to begin. The silence that terrified the stars. Silence in war was not unusual. Silence after atrocity was. Across the frontier systems, the Varkesh Dominion advanced with confidence bordering on boredom. Their fleets moved in disciplined formations, banners unfurled, transponders broadcasting compliance with council regulations. Resistance was light and increasingly rare. Human outposts either withdrew or were already dark when the Varkesh arrived. To the Dominion's strategists, the conclusion was obvious. Humanity was collapsing. In the war halls of the Varkesh flagship, analysts reviewed intercepted human communications, civilian traffic, fragmented emergency calls, and the fading echoes of evacuation orders. There were no rallying speeches, no threats, no declarations of total resistance. The humans had not even formally declared war. "They are grieving," one Varkesh commander concluded. "Their species bonds too deeply. Loss paralyzes them." The assumption spread quickly through Allied fleets and neutral observers alike. Galactic history supported it. Species that loved intensely broke quickly. Species that mourned openly could not sustain prolonged conflict. The Galactic Council agreed to wait. While the galaxy waited, humanity prepared. On Earth, the sky above the Pacific split open as orbital docks long considered obsolete powered back to life. Their hulls were unmarked, stripped of national insignia, painted in dull, non-reflective alloys. They were not symbols. They were tools. In subterranean command complexes, admirals who had once sworn never to wear uniforms again returned to service without ceremony. There were no cameras. No speeches. Only brief acknowledgments and sealed orders. The Last War Doctrine was no longer theoretical. It had been written in humanity's darkest centuries, when wars were not fought for borders or ideology, but for survival itself. Back then, humanity had nearly destroyed its own world learning a single lesson. If extinction is possible, restraint is a luxury. The doctrine was simple in principle and horrifying in implication. No limited engagements. No protected industries. No symbolic victories. The objective was not dominance. The objective was removal of the threat. Shipyards converted overnight. Civilian factories retooled without protest. Medical vessels were redesigned to double as battlefield recovery and combat support. Human society did not rally with cheers or hatred. It hardened with quiet efficiency. There were no slogans. Only acceptance. Alien intelligence agencies struggled to interpret the data. Human fleets moved erratically, abandoning standard formations and established doctrines. Ships appeared on long-range scans for moments before vanishing into stealth fields or microjumps that violated best-practice safety margins. Human vessels bore scars before battle even began. Armor patched rather than polished. Weapons arrays exposed, unadorned, and brutally functional. These were not ships designed to intimidate. They were designed to endure. Council observers filed increasingly uneasy reports. One noted that human military traffic avoided all civilian channels. Another observed that human commanders issued orders with no contingency for retreat. Casualty projections were not minimized, only acknowledged. It was not bravery. It was not fanaticism. It was commitment. The Varkesh Dominion, unaware of the shift occurring beneath their notice, finalized their campaign's decisive maneuver. A massive fleet assembled at the edge of Sol-adjacent space, intent on crushing Earth's defenses and forcing humanity into formal surrender. Their confidence was complete. They have no allies willing to intervene, a Varkesh strategist reported. No remaining fleets of consequence, another added. Their silence confirms it. A Galactic Council observer was embedded aboard the command vessel to witness the final engagement. The Council wished to record humanity's defeat, for historical purposes. As the Varkesh Armada advanced, human space did something unexpected. It did not resist. Defense platforms powered down. Patrol craft withdrew beyond sensor range. Communication beacons went dark one by one, leaving a void where a civilization had been. To the Varkesh, it looked like fear. To the Council observer, it felt wrong. At the edge of the system, human ships began to appear. Not in a defensive line. Not guarding planets or stations. They emerged in deep space, between the stars, positioned where no traditional engagement doctrine would place them. They did not broadcast identification codes. Their drives burned hot and unstable, pushing tolerances that suggested they did not expect to return. The Varkesh commander opened a channel, prepared to deliver the standard ultimatum. The channel remained unanswered. Instead, a single data packet arrived, unmarked, unencrypted, unmistakably human. It contained no threats, no pleas, only a line of text. You mistake our silence for weakness. It is preparation. Across the alien fleet, confusion rippled. Tactical officers requested clarification. Commanders debated response protocols. The human ships did not wait. Their drives flared. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, a species prepared to fight not to win a war, but to end the idea of one. The battle that changed everything. The first human strike did not target the Varkesh flagship. It tore through the command net. From the edge of sensor range, objects accelerated to impossible velocities. Dense, inert masses hurled at relativistic speed. There were no warheads, no guidance systems, no last-second course corrections. They did not need them. When the first projectile passed through a Varkesh communications cruiser, it did not explode. It erased the ship. By the time alarms sounded, 3 more vessels were gone, punched through as if they had never existed. Command channels dissolved into static. Fleet cohesion fractured in seconds. The Varkesh commander shouted orders that no longer reached their targets. Then the human ships moved. They did not advance in lines or wings. They surged forward in overlapping vectors, drives flaring white as they burned far past safe limits. Vessels split apart, reformed, vanished into microjumps and reappeared inside enemy formations. It was not elegant. It was relentless. Human ships closed to distances considered suicidal by galactic standards. Point defense fire raked their hulls, stripping armor, venting compartments. They did not break away. They kept coming. One human cruiser lost half its mass to focused plasma fire. Its drive core destabilized. Rather than disengage, the ship adjusted course and rammed a Varkesh battleship amidships. The collision triggered a controlled core breach, collapsing local gravity and folding both vessels into a brief, screaming singularity. The shockwave tore through nearby ships. Across the battlefield, similar acts unfolded. Damaged human vessels altered trajectories, slamming into enemy formations. Crews stayed aboard to guide them in, faces calm, movements precise. There were no screams over open channels. No final messages. The Varkesh had never encountered an enemy that treated destruction as a tactic rather than a failure. Boarding alarms began to sound. Human Marines breached hulls using methods outlawed by Council decree, cutting directly through pressurized sections, venting entire decks to vacuum to gain entry. They moved fast, unburdened by ceremonial armor, weapons designed for close quarters and absolute lethality. They did not seek prisoners. They targeted command nodes, engineering cores, and life support systems. When resistance stiffened, they detonated localized charges that left nothing behind but twisted bulkheads and drifting debris. The Galactic Council observer recorded everything, hands trembling as data streamed in faster than it could be catalogued. This was not a battle. It was a systemic collapse. Then the humans deployed the weapons the galaxy had buried in memory. Gravity collapse charges detonated at the heart of Varkesh formations, crushing ships inward, snapping hulls like fragile shells. Neural shock fields swept across command vessels, incapacitating crews in seconds, leaving ships adrift and helpless. Relativistic kill platforms fired from beyond visual range, their impacts arriving before sensors could register the launch. The Varkesh attempted to retreat. Human ships cut off the corridors. They did not pursue fleeing vessels blindly. They targeted engines, drives, navigation arrays. They left ships alive just long enough to understand defeat. The Varkesh commander finally re-established a channel. "This is not war," he roared. "This is extermination." The response came immediately. "Come. Human. You destroyed our civilians," the voice said. "You hunted our evacuation ships. You made survival the objective." A pause. "We adapted." The flagship's shields failed moments later. As the Varkesh command vessel broke apart, panic spread through the remaining fleet. Orders contradicted each other. Veteran officers abandoned doctrine, screaming for withdrawal, for mercy, for intervention that would never come. Human ships did not celebrate. They continued until the threat was neutralized. When the last Varkesh vessel capable of organized resistance was disabled or destroyed, the human fleet powered down its weapons. Damaged ships drifted, many barely holding together, life signs fading within shattered hulls. The battlefield fell silent. Wreckage orbited in slow, terrible arcs. Emergency beacons blinked unanswered. The stars themselves seemed distant, indifferent to what had occurred. The Council observer ended the recording with a single, shaken assessment. Humans did not fight for advantage. They did not fight for honor. They fought as if every battle was the last one they would ever allow. As human ships turned away from the debris field, burned, broken, victorious, the galaxy began to understand a truth it had never faced before. This species did not fear war. They feared extinction. And if forced to choose between the two, they would teach the universe to fear them instead. After fear, silence again. The aftermath of the battle did not unfold in fire or triumph. It unfolded in quiet. Across the ruined expanse of space where the Varkesh armada had died, human ships worked methodically. Rescue craft moved among the debris, retrieving survivors where survival was still possible. Medical teams treated enemy and human alike, their actions efficient, detached, and oddly gentle after such devastation. When the last recoverable life had been accounted for, the human fleet withdrew. They did not pursue the remnants of the Varkesh dominion. They did not strike supply worlds or demand reparations. The war ended not with conquest, but with absence. Human ships vanished back into their territories, leaving only wreckage and unanswered questions behind. The galaxy reeled. Emergency session protocols were triggered within the Galactic Council. Delegates arrived in panic, their platforms glowing with agitated hues. Species that had fought wars for millennia struggled to process what they had witnessed. The Council observer's report played in full. No edits. No commentary. Only raw footage of human ships ramming enemies, of gravity collapsing fleets, of commanders breaking under pressure they had never imagined. When the recording ended, no one spoke. The rules of engagement, cornerstones of galactic civilization, were quietly suspended. They had not failed because they were violated. They had failed because they were irrelevant against an enemy that did not recognize war as a negotiation. Humanity had not broken the rules. They had stepped outside them entirely. A formal message arrived from human space 3 cycles later. It was broadcast openly, unencrypted, across every major relay node. There were no threats in it. No accusations. The speaker was human. Middle-aged. Unremarkable. Dressed in a simple uniform with no visible rank. "We do not seek dominance," the message began. "We do not desire territory, tribute, or fear." The delegates listened in silence. "We joined this galaxy believing that restraint was universal, that mercy was understood. When our civilians were targeted, when our evacuation ships were destroyed, restraint became a risk we could no longer afford." The speaker paused, eyes steady. This was not vengeance. This was prevention. The message ended without flourish. There was no response to invite. Within the council, classifications were revised. Humanity's diplomatic profile changed overnight. Where once they were listed as developing power, they were now marked. Threat level. Existential. Conflict probability. Low, unless provoked. Recommended policy. Avoid hostility at all costs. Military academies across the galaxy rewrote their curricula. The battle was dissected, studied, argued over. Strategists struggled to reconcile the data with existing theory. How did a smaller force dismantle a superior fleet so completely? The conclusion was uncomfortable but unavoidable. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to make continuation impossible. Culturally, the impact ran deeper. Merchant guilds rerouted trade lanes to avoid human space, not out of fear of attack, but fear of involvement. Parents told their offspring cautionary stories about the species that smiled in diplomacy and annihilated in silence. A new phrase entered common use among veterans and politicians alike. Do not corner humans. On Earth, there were no parades. The dead were honored privately. Names were carved into stone and memory. Shipyards returned to civilian production. Fleets were repaired, then hidden once more beneath layers of bureaucracy and distance. Human diplomats resumed their roles at the council, standing again on their plain platform at the chamber's edge. They spoke politely. They negotiated fairly. They compromised where compromise was safe. But now, when they spoke, the chamber listened. No one mocked their softness. No one questioned their resolve. The galaxy had learned the difference between kindness and weakness. Kindness was a choice. Restraint was a decision. And mercy, once withdrawn, did not return easily. In the years that followed, conflicts still erupted among the stars. Borders shifted. Empires argued and threatened. But when humans were involved, something changed. Wars paused. Negotiations accelerated. Aggression softened into caution. Because everyone remembered the day the rules failed. The day a species proved that survival could be weaponized. And the galaxy understood, at last, that humanity's greatest strength was not its firepower, its numbers, or its technology. It was this. They knew exactly when to stop being merciful. And once that line was crossed, they never needed to teach the lesson twice.